Greetings, viewers. This is King H. Welcome to my channel. The United Nations has criticized Ethiopia's decision to dismiss seven top UN officials who are expressing fear for the 5.2 million people in Tigray region who required urgent aid as malnutrition continues to rise. I say that's bullshit. The spokesperson for UN High Commission for Human Rights, Robert Colville, said the plan to expel the heads of the team in Ethiopia is a very grave step and unacceptable. Ethiopia expelled the UN diplomats for interfering in its internal affairs. That was the right decision to do. My personal opinion as a radical Pan-Africanist, the UN officials were not supposed to be in Ethiopia in the first place. Understand this, Africans. We just had the United Nation meeting in the United States, and African leaders were begging and asking to be part of the G20, that the African Union should be part of G20. What did the West say? No, they don't want that. Why? Because, well, they need Africa to survive when it comes to raw materials. And making Africa G20 part of the G20 will not be good for their own interests. So no, that's not going to happen. And it's stupid, it's foolish for African leaders to be begging to be part of the G20. African Union or African countries shouldn't be even part of the G20, although South Africa is there. But it's not for the interests of black South Africans, but for the interests of white South Africans who are enjoying the resources of South Africa, which is why South Africa is the only African countries in the G20. So the African Union wants to be part of the G20, but it's not going to happen. Yet you have the European Union that is part of the G20, and you have top UN officials in Ethiopia meddling in Ethiopia. Then China say, oh, they try to put a good face. They are there for the interest of the 5.2 million people in Tigray. No, they're there for their own personal gains, and they're meddling in Ethiopia to get what they need. They don't care about the 5.2 million people in Tigray. They don't. They don't care about the 1.4 million people in Africa. That's the honest truth. But many Africans and African leaders don't seem to understand. See, Africa is being controlled, or at least didn't have access to two systems from the West. These two systems is the Commonwealth and La Francophonie. Though Ethiopia is not part of the Commonwealth, nor part of La Francophonie, but through the United Nations, they have access in Ethiopia. Why should they allow the United Nations officials be in Ethiopia in the first place? They shouldn't. You see, through the European Union, they have access in Africa. Through the Commonwealth, they have access in Africa. Through La Francophonie, they have access to Africa. Then, through their own individual countries in Europe, they have access to Africa. They have access to Africa in multiple layers. Those multiple layers are pulling resources from Africa and enriching themselves. And Africa don't seem to understand that we don't have to be part of La Francophonie. We don't have to be part of the Commonwealth. Why do you think Britain decided to split from Europe? Because Through the Commonwealth, they have enough nations to enrich themselves. Through the Commonwealth, they have a total of 24, a total of 19 countries through the Commonwealth. Through La Francophonie, they have a total of 25 countries plus 3 associate countries. That put all together, that's 52 countries. Africa is 54. So which the other two probably associate to one or the other. Through those two systems, they control Africa. They have influence in Africa. And then they have the European Union having access. They have the United Nations having access. They have the United States. They have Britain. They have other France having access to Africa. We need to get rid of the Commonwealth. We need to get out of the Commonwealth. We need to get out of La Francophonie. But our leaders think by sticking with the West is the only way to bring up Africa. No. Those two systems are draining the continent of Africa and enriching the West. And now, why do you think China is involved in Africa? Because they want to do the same thing, but in a more intelligent way. They want to do it and do it a lot better. And some Africans think that, the Chinese are there for the interests of Africa. No, they're there for the interests of China. And any other country that's coming to Africa is there for the interest. They are meddling in the political system of Africa, but they will not allow that to happen in their own countries. African countries or African leaders cannot meddle in European countries or in Asian countries. But China is meddling. France is meddling. United Kingdom is meddling. Ever since we had colonization, they say colonization is over, but they still have their fangs in the continent of Africa. Those UN officials they're not supposed to be in Ethiopia in the first place, because how many officials of Ethiopia are in Europe? Think about it. The same amount of officials that we have in Europe is the same amount of officials they should have in any of the countries in Africa, but they have more officials created to be in the continent of Africa. The way they have redistributed power to have access to Africa is not the same as Africa having access to Europe or to China or to Arab countries. And this is something that the African Union, East Africa, West Africa, Central Africa needs to reevaluate, need to look into. But some of the African leaders are only interested thinking that, when they go meet this European country or that European country or the United States or whatever other country that is in the West, they will be able to work their problems. But that's not true. They're not there to help build Africa. They're there to gain the resources that they need from Africa to build themselves up. And when Africans and African leaders can understand the concept of what they're doing, maybe then they'll be able to understand how to play politics, because this is politics that's being played. And Africa is losing when it comes to global politics. Africa doesn't really benefit from China or from the West. Mali is having this issue where, they're trying to bring Russia in, and then France don't want them to bring the Russia in, which is, they're using their colonization pass to say, no, you cannot allow the Russians. If you allow the Russians in, then the entire world will be against you. But even if you bring the Russians in and you're still part of La Francophonie, what are you really going to accomplish? African countries are supposed to be independent countries that can choose who they want to work with, but they cannot do that. If you still have a contract with France, you still have to you deal with United Kingdom or Britain through the Commonwealth. That system wasn't created to enhance Africa. It was created to enhance France and the United Kingdom. So for Ethiopia to kick out these United Nations officials, it's only right because they're meddling in things they were not supposed to meddle in the first place. Do you have the United Nations officials in Ethiopia? What extra officials does Ethiopia have in United Nations? Why is it okay for the United Nations to be in Ethiopia, but African countries cannot be part of the G20, or they cannot have a vote in the United Nations or a voice in the United Nations? But it's okay for you to bring your officials in Ethiopia and meddle in internal politics. Now, African leaders need to wise up. We need to kick out some of the system. If the United Nations officials are going to be there, then we don't need to be part of the Commonwealth. We don't need to be part of La Francophonie. We don't need to be part of this extra shit they create just to meddle in African politics. But unfortunately, Africa has bad leaders. The next jurisdiction that should be involved in Ethiopian politics is East Africa, not the United Nations. Why is the United Nations in Ethiopia in the first place? They have the officials but they don't have the officials in other Western nations as compared to Africa. And they're saying that it's unacceptable. Unacceptable how? Why? Why is it unacceptable? This is ridiculous. Kick them out. The Tigray issue is an internal issue that needs to be solved by Ethiopians, one way or the other. They don't need the UN meddling in affairs that they don't need to be. That's my opinion.